Welcome, everybody. We'll get going in just a minute or two. Does anybody know how to turn off the dings?
You getting some sound when people join, is it?
Are you guys getting sound? I'm getting sound. Maybe just as the host.
I'm not.
Oh, you're not?
I'm not
Okay.
hearing any dings either.
Okay. I'm getting like a ding every 2 seconds. Good. As long as it's just me. If you're just joining, tell us where you're from in the chat. We'll get started in like 60 seconds. Got a great distribution of places where people are from. All right, let's do this. Okay, hey everybody, welcome. I'm Josh Schachter, one of your co-hosts of this event, AI that delivers the top AI tools in CS, presented by the founders of those platforms. And so Update, Reef, Staircase, Rocket Lane, we are all very excited to be here, be able to bring everybody together, and we'll introduce our facilitators and other guests as well. So again, nice to meet everybody. I'm Josh, there's my email. There's the QR code to connect with me on LinkedIn. Of course, we all love followership and connectivity. Quickly here, agenda for the session. It was outlined on our webpage there. I'll go through a quick overview of the state of AI. I always find in running these sessions that people really appreciate just a little bit of the AI 101 and getting our perspective. We'll jump into a founder panel. Jenny is going to, and we'll introduce her in a moment. Jenny's going to help facilitate that with our 4 founders. Then each founder will be up and demoing their product to Wendy Johnson, who we have in the house tonight. And so we'll introduce Wendy in a moment and some of the quote unquote challenges that she's looking to solve that our founders are going to help her with. And then we'll leave a little bit of time for Q&A. So want to engage folks first here. I'm a bloomer. So Reid Hoffman recently came out with a book on AI, and it talks about the 4 archetypes of, and let me just load this as I talk here, the 4 archetypes of how people are really thinking about AI. And this should launch right now for everybody. And so you've got the bloomers, the people who believe AI is the real deal, but we need to be a little bit more careful as we approach it, but still really step on the gas. You've got the Zoomers; those are the Elon Musks of the world, the folks that are just like all steam ahead. This is just the future. Let's run with it. Gloomers are folks that are a little bit more hesitant, and then Doomers are the folks that believe Skynet is coming. And if you could make sure you're on mute if you're not up on stage here, we'd appreciate that. Okay, I've got 65 responses in here. We'll keep going for another few more seconds. It's probably no surprise here where we're going to end this poll. It's a vast majority. We got 94% of folks are bloomers. So I think that makes sense, and glad to know we're in good company. Next question here is, how often do you use AI? And I'll be interested in seeing if the responses have kind of changed since we started asking this question, a year or 2 years ago. Let me change the poll. Okay. So how often do you use AI at work? A little bit more variance here, I'm seeing. Great. So 50% every day. A quarter of folks use it every hour. I'm actually in that almost every minute camp. I keep my chat GPT up on the tab at all times pretty much. And then cool, we've got some folks that have never actually used it at work. Probably they're restricted if I had to guess. And I think the tides of that'll be changing. AI terms every leader should know, every CS leader should know. These are not industry terms. These are really kind of more technical concepts. And I kind of have this belief here that this is a really important part of really being an evangelist of AI is really understanding some of the foundations at a very high level. So launch this poll right now. This will probably take a little bit more time to complete, but which of those terms are you familiar with? And do you think you could describe in a simplistic way? We've got about half the votes in here. If you're just joining us, welcome. We're just about to get into the state of AI overview. And I'll close this out in about 10 seconds. Okay, looks like we have all the results in. So most folks are familiar at this point with LLMs. RAG is less so, graph RAG even less than that. Those two are obviously very related, and we'll go through that in a second. MCP is the new the hot concept right now that's driving a lot of innovation. AGI and fine tuning versus prompting versus embedding. That one's probably actually a little bit more ambiguous. So I'm not surprised that not as many folks are familiar with that. Let's go. Let's go into these. So that's where I really want to start. It's just, only kind of took 10 minutes here to do a state of AI. And I believe that the foundations of understanding the technology are a really important part of all of this. LLMs. 90% of folks are already very familiar with LLMs, could describe it to an eighth grader. What they are, type of AI that learns by reading tons of text. As we know, a lot of these GPTs and LLMs, they formed their knowledge through scraping the internet and just understanding all the different reference text that's out there in public domain. And so you can think of it as that super smart intern who's reading the internet and then helping you explain things clearly. How this would power platforms like UpdateAI. I'll go ahead and use that as an example. Well, the LLMs are what help us in our company generate notes of meetings and generate things like follow-up emails. As we get a little bit more advanced here, and this is where there's less familiarity, we start thinking about RAG, which stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. And it's actually a pretty good literal name for it, because basically it's retrieving additional information to augment what is generated for the LLM. So LLMs are very smart. We know that. But we also know that they're based on what was out there for them to originally read, right? That was, again, from that public domain from the internet and all those sorts of things. So a RAG pipeline is what you'll generally hear referred to in the technical world, is a data pipeline that allows the LLM to go fetch a little bit of additional context that it might not have in its own repository, in its own knowledge base, and then spit out an even more relevant, up-to-date type of response for whatever the task is that it was retrieved. So in the world of what we do, this could look like, the follow-up email, again, generated from the LLM. But what if that follow-up email is also able to pull in additional things like notes from the CRM or even a status update from somebody's LinkedIn profile? Those would be examples of how that RAG pipeline is helping to enrich the overall task and inference that's applied. Graph is a type of RAG that gets a little bit smarter. We all know about social graphs, and you can probably visualize like the image on the right side there, where you've got a graph relationship coming together, and that's really what it is. It's taking that RAG concept of injecting richer knowledge into the LLM, but it's doing it with knowledge that's all based on the relationships of these things. This is something that I'm really excited about. You could kind of think of we don't do this today, but somewhere I would love to go with UpdateAI is, let's say we hear a risk or an opportunity in a conversation with a customer, and that customer has certain types of profile attributes. There are certain type of ICP. Well, through that RAG pipeline, we can go and we can find similar types of customers based on the risks that we've overheard similarly, and based on those profiles of those other customers that are at a similar life cycle stage or in a similar industry, those sorts of things, and be able to then present that back to the user. So again, it's taking more information, getting additional information, which is the RAG part, and the graph part is looking for those relationships to help enrich the output. As we evolve here and get a little bit more advanced, we start talking about things like MCP, multi-agent collaboration protocol. Sri, I'm sure you'll mention something along these lines. I know this is big with you these days. But this is an exciting new technology, which is basically the infrastructure that allows agents to work together. And of course, agents are effectively the vehicle of all of this AI to really help us get jobs done. And so you've got all these folks working together. Imagine it like a sophisticated Zapier integration. Only in this case, the CSM or whoever the user is doesn't have to be pulling all of those triggers themselves, right? This is where through that MCP orchestrates for each of the different micro agents, if you will, to go do different things. So in customer success, this could look like you're preparing for a renewal call. You've got one agent through the MCP. It's preparing all the recent usage stats and all the sentiment scores from the different types of Medallia types of platforms or whatnot. And then you've got another agent that's helping you to draft the QBR deck or the renewal deck or the memo that you're sending to the customer. And then you've got another agent that maybe after the conversation is helping to schedule follow-up calls or help to draft the actual contract or send updates in Slack. So all these agents working together is the beauty of MCP, and you can see how powerful of a concept this is that we're really now just beginning to start to work with. AGI is the next evolution of our terms here, artificial general intelligence, and basically this is a form of AI that can compete with humans on any intellectual task. There's different types of tests that are out there. They're pretty technical. Some are in science, in math, in psychology, those sorts of things. But generally, the important part of this graph to show, and this is on a log scale, is that only a couple of years ago or even quarters ago, people were imagining that AGI would be, decades away or many years away, and that has dramatically dropped that time that people believe that AGI will be here. So it's coming soon. I think we probably all hope not too soon, but, excuse me, too soon, but not so far away either. And one reason that AI is going to continue to proliferate is because the costs are decreasing. Here's a chart that shows the cost of basically getting up that human level performance in these different types of AGI tests, the MMLU and human evaluation tests. And you can see how just over on that x-axis, it's just been, again, months and a couple quarters, and the costs have dropped dramatically. So this is making inference, which is basically the word for AI helping to do stuff, so much more cost effective, and why you're going to continue to see more and more and more of these jobs to be done facilitated through AI. Where experts believe that we're headed, there's a link right here. It's AI 2027 paper that was recently published. Great paper. It's a few folks from OpenAI that had left and a few folks on some pretty major public policy boards. I'll be honest with you, it's a little bit of a gloomer type of mentality. I think they're very much evangelists of AI, but I think they're also able to see how quickly things are accelerated. And this is all hypothetical. This is the quote unquote fictional narrative that they've conjured up based on the insights that they have, which are pretty intimate with the industry. They believe here that by mid this year, you'll have the first practical AI agents. I think we kind of see that coming, right? That's the MCP protocol and whatnot. by later this year, you're going to have major data centers that are dramatically accelerating AI R&D. And so you see that already in the news. We know there's geopolitical tensions around this. We know that Microsoft, I think it was 40 billion that they committed to data center building, and I know they've had a little bit of issues really kind of raising the funds for that. But we know that's coming as well. And once that comes, you're going to see, more advancements. And so next year they're predicting AI agents entering more enterprise workflows, more of that kind of broad adoption. Superhuman coders running at massive scale. This is all we know that AI is really helping with coding right now. And then we get a little bit more doomish bioweapon risks and AI becoming unsupervisable. That's a little bit more like the Skynet type of place. So I don't mean this to be a fear factor in any way. It's a really kind of enlightening look, and I encourage folks to read it if they're interested in that. And part of their predictions as they relate to CS here are these things. Within the next couple of years, agents will replace routine work. I mean, we're already seeing that happen. Junior roles becoming disrupted. I think we can all kind of see that as not being so far-fetched, and I know that's something on many people's minds. AI in every customer conversation, misalignment and hallucination risks. Already we see a little bit of that. Misalignment is effectively the theory of Skynet, right? If AI starts to really get its own mind and go in different directions that are not aligned with the human who really should be controlling the AI. And then customer expectations rising. And so, I think there are some actionable things that leaders can do around these predictions. For one, I firmly believe that organizations should start piloting AI, even if it's at a more bite-sized level of helping with routine tasks. Leaders should start to really be thinking, if you're not already, and I would imagine a lot of folks here are already doing this, but putting it in job descriptions to make sure that folks that you're hiring are, they have the expectation of being enabled by AI and potentially already kind of really have a deep knowledge base on AI. Training teams to really know that they're going to be talking not only to humans, but also to AI, to bot or human to bot is going to become more of a commonplace type of interaction. I don't really know exactly what that means, but I know it'll mean something around enablement and training us to have conversations with our customers. Setting clear expectation or clear usage policies. So already, we at UpdateAI have some forward-thinking prospects and customers who have created AI governance bodies to certify and create rules around how they want to use AI in the organization, committees, if you will. And then I think it behooves all products, like the four of us here, to use AI to excite people and our customers, for them to really be able to showcase their capabilities in order to really show that they're on the innovative edge of thinking and they can execute faster and all those sorts of things. Okay, so that was my quick-ish overview, went a few minutes over. Jenny's going to help us pick up the pace here, and I want to introduce everybody to Jenny Calvert, who leads post-sales at UpdateAI and is going to be walking us through our founder panel. Thanks, Jenny.
Amazing. Thanks, Josh. My ask as we move into the panel is, if you are on video, that you turn it off so we can spotlight just the 4 founders that we have today. Thank you so very much. And founders, would love for you to turn your videos on so we bring you front and center. Thank you so much. Awesome. Well, I definitely will make up a little bit of time, Josh and Josh fashion, a little long-winded, but we know how much you are passionate about AI. So we'll kick off introductions with my first question. And so each of you, Josh, will have you start, Shri, and then Brent, and then Ori. So we'll go in that rotation for all questions, just so we're not talking over each other. But would love for you each to introduce yourselves. So what is your name? What company are you from? And without giving too much away, what is your single most killer AI feature? Josh, over to you.
Okay, I'll go quick since I was too long-winded, Jenny. Josh Schachter, founder and CEO of UpdateAI. We help take what we think are magical meeting notes for customers and then translate them into insights for broader voice of customer intelligence. And our killer hook feature is just that, is identifying, discovering key topics and themes that we hear from the ongoing conversations with your customers that we'd love to show you in a little bit.
Awesome. Shri, over to you.
Hey folks, I'm Sri Krishnan Ganesan, founder and CEO of Rocket Lane. We are a customer onboarding and professional services automation platform, fairly popular, used by companies like Clary, Moveworks, new AI companies like Glean, Vercel, more than 550 companies out there. Thank you.
No killer AI feature to share yet? I'm saving it for later.
Yeah, we'll keep that as suspense.
Ooh, I love the hook. I love the hook. Brent, over to you.
Right. I'm Brent Grimes, founder CEO of Reef AI. At Reef, we take your customer data, apply advanced machine learning, and help you recover a bunch of revenue that would have otherwise churned. So we'll talk more about that. I would say, so we operate in a little bit different domain of AI. So we're not so focused on LLMs, but we're focused on machine learning. And so what we've innovated is the ability not only to understand who will churn, but when. So adding the dimension of time and doing predictions makes all the difference in terms of revenue recovery. So we'll get to that in the demo, but that's an area where we've done a lot of R&D and are getting really good results.
Amazing. Thank you. Ori.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ori Antis, the founder of Staircase AI and no longer the CEO. We've been acquired by Gainsight. So now I lead product at Gainsight, SVP of product. Staircase is really a communication intelligence platform. So it analyzes all the interactions in the B2B space between customers and vendors. So think anything like emails, Slack channels, call transcriptions and tickets. And the idea here is really to provide a kind of 360 view of what's happening with the customer without any manual, data analysis. Killer feature is probably sentiment analysis with a B2B kind of flavor to it, risk identification and opportunity identification.
Incredible. Thank you all for sharing. I'm definitely excited to see what's to come. So we'll go in the same order, and I'm curious to hear what have been the biggest challenges when implementing AI into your product and features?
Sure. So, I mean, I think the challenge actually from a strategic standpoint is you really want to, you're really excited about AI, and we'd love to turn all of our features into AI-rich features. But the challenge is knowing when to do that and when not to. We recently did an analysis of our features and like a cost analysis of which features were being used the most and which were costing us the most on a unit economics basis. And we were kind of surprised that some of the features that were costing us the most were not the most valuable features. And so that made us really rethink, like, what really needs to be AI here versus what is maybe us just being a little bit trigger friendly and excitable with what you can do with the prospect of AI. So the challenge, I mean, it's not like there's market challenges and technical challenges and stuff like that, but I'll focus on that vector of just the internal challenges of managing our own excitement and product strategy.
Interesting. Tree, what about you?
Yeah, I think our approach, the big mind shift for our product managers has been how to think AI first every time you're conceptualizing a new feature, and how to adjust for this. You're used to building things that are more deterministic, and it's not going to be this way. So how do you ensure you're still building the feature in a way in which the customer understands that something is not deterministic, they may need to act on it, etc. There's some explainability as part of the experience for them. Why did something get suggested a certain way? So incorporating that mindset shift into how we're building product has been one area where we needed to, get to terms with how to do it. The other, I would say, is just evals. How do we make sure that when we are trying out new models, when we're trying out different scenarios, we're trying out the right scenarios over here to, we have some Gen AI features. So we need to make sure that when we're making progress, we're truly making progress for our customers. It's not like, making sense for some and upsetting what was working already for others. So getting that right set of evals in place is another area that's been a challenge.
Shri, I'm sorry, I'm gonna jump in here. Shri, for folks, what's evals? And you're using a little bit of jargon there.
Okay. Think of it this way. There is a model. Typically, people use foundational models, which means like what is out of the box from OpenAI, etc. And then there are prompts that you're using to generate certain results using, what's given to you from the model. And there are various scenarios in which this needs to work for you. Some may be controlled prompts that you've created for your customers, but there may be an input that a customer adds, right? Let's say a customer asks a question about a call that happened. Now, you're not just going to pass the question as is to the model. You're going to have, some RAG, as Josh mentioned, like additional context coming from other places. You're going to have a prompt that you create a certain way, which takes the input or question from a customer, uses the model, and generates the right answer. Now, how do you make sure that when you're making progress, when you're using like a newer model, when you're changing your prompt, it's changing things for the better for the customer? So for that, you need to have a set of, think of it as test cases, which you need to know how to score on those test cases as well. Are those test cases representative of what your customers will use you for, how they will use you, right? So that's a high level understanding of what that is.
Thank you. Brent, what about you? Challenges in implementing AI into the product and feature set.
Yeah, I think it's less of a product implementation challenge and more of a mindset and really helping educate customers, because I think AI represents a tremendous opportunity to dramatically improve the way that we do lots of things, right? But I think the way that AI instinctually gets applied is to take existing processes and workflows and try to improve existing processes with AI. And I think AI will really have a pronounced impact when we just rethink processes from the beginning based on the capabilities that are provided by AI. In our world, what that looks like is, I think there's an acceptance today that one, existing health scores and the way that people have really thought about using their own kind of knowledge of their products and their instincts around what's important to drive prioritization of resources and capacity is very natural. But I think there's a mindset shift that says, look, if you have a predictive model that can prove its ability to signal risk or growth opportunity, and you just play the probabilities and you worry less about trying to cover everything, it's a much more efficient way to run the business. But it takes a leap of faith to say, we're going to trust the data, we're going to trust this new model. And what it means is that you remove a lot of day-to-day busy work, kind of workflow, auto-generated tasks, and you bet on a smaller number of priorities. It's a little uncomfortable to accept that as a reality until you actually see it working. So part of our role is to help walk customers through that transition and say, look, you can make a small bet initially to prove it out and then scale from there. So I think this is one example, but I think across the AI landscape, there's a lot of these situations where the first step is to improve an existing process, but within a year, 6 months, a year, 2 years, there's going to be a completely new way to solve problems than we were doing before.
Thank you. Ori.
Yes, I think one is speed. I think the technology is just moving so fast. So from a product perspective, I get questions on this from my PMs is like, do we do this, or is one of the foundation models going to come up with it? So there's that question. So kind of balancing that. I think evals and taking what Sri mentioned, and in a real simplistic way, evals is just testing the output of an LLM, right? It's a little different than testing regular software. So I think that has its challenges both at scale, right? Because if you're dealing with, for example, we'll process millions of emails a month. You can't just put people in front of it like you used to do with traditional machine learning. And I think the third one is actually customer facing. I think that the way people respond to AI is a little different. So example is people are more sensitive to AI making a mistake than people making a mistake. It's an interesting one. And then there's sometimes it depends on the application. For a little bit of a technical term, right, between precision and recall. Some features we see more sensitivity to precision and some to recall. And Josh, if you want me to dive into those, I can. I think everybody knows.
We'll keep it less technical. No surprise here that 4 founders have a desire to go technical, which is great. For the audience sake, I want to tap into the people as we wrap up questions. And there's a lot of, chatter about what AI will do to the job market and what that means for employees and headcount and things like that. So would love to hear how each of you think that companies should address concerns about AI's impact on employment.
Why doesn't somebody else start?
I'll share one good example and then I'll give you my perspective. So there is a large database company I know, which has started using AI in a big way in their professional services team to do some of the technical work that they do, coding work that they do. So they go into a large enterprise, they need to transform an existing enterprise application to a modern tech stack first to be able to use their database. And using AI has shrunk the timelines from like 20 months, 24 months to 3 to 5 months. And you would expect that the team size is going to go down because of that. But they're actually growing the team from 300 to 600 people in PS because the appetite to work with them has shot through the roof just because like the number of months it takes to get that project done has shrunk from like 2 years to 3 months. And that's the positive example. On the other hand, I do feel, to go by video I saw of the Anthropic CEO, the folks who built Claude, right? He was giving an example of, hey, 50% of the people lose their jobs or 50% of the roles are eliminated. That's a very bad scenario. So we need to work towards 100% getting eliminated. So that's where, I think that's what SF is working on in a way. I mean, all the epicenter of AI in San Francisco is working on. So it is real. I think it is going to come for people's jobs. At the same time, if you're someone who's learned to use it well and augmenting yourself with how you're using it, you're probably less at risk. That's how I look at it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to go next. I think there's a reality in customer success specifically, right? I've been in CS a long time. I was at MuleSoft for 7 years, leading CS before starting Reef. And there was a time when we were all hiring big teams and really just throwing lots of resource at customers because we assumed it was doing good things and the market could really afford that approach. We've all noticed over the last few years, aside from AI, there's been a lot of cutbacks in customer success and a lot of, I think, a redefinition of what coverage should look like, how we think about digital, how we think about human coverage of customers, right? So I think there was already a strong trend towards leaner customer success organizations even before AI. And I think AI only kind of magnifies that, right? So I think there's some imperatives within customer success to be able to prove the unique value that people bring to the equation, right? And I think there's new tools and opportunities to do that because I think more than ever, it's becoming easier to start to quantify what is the impact that individual CSMs and teams are having on the revenue of the organization, on the retention of customers, on your ability to really understand behaviors of customers and contribute those to organizations. So I think the CS teams and the CSMs that really embrace AI to increase their value within their organizations and quantify that value are well positioned. And those that kind of try to survive on the old model are going to have a hard time.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think so the job market, is going to change. And I think that if you don't think that that's going to happen, we think differently. I do think that some jobs will, probably be eliminated. I mean, we're already seeing that in certain areas. Like if you look at support, where we're seeing a lot of success with the use of AI, it's not like I think that jobs are going to be completely eliminated, but the scale that one individual can handle is going to be so much more, which means they're going to be less, open recs. So if you use a framework like jobs to be done on kind of human-based, jobs or occupations today, you can map certain things that people do into AI, and certain things don't map today. The technology is just not there yet. So if you think about relationship building, you think about quarterbacking, you think about all that, other stuff that you can't map, but a lot of things can be mapped already today pretty well. And I think that, that's definitely going to affect a lot of those more mundane jobs, and hopefully, give people more time for strategic, stuff and maybe more free time. Not a profit, but I do think it's going to change for sure.
Yeah, I mean, jobs will be eliminated. We know that. I don't think we're naive to that. I think if you look, we're in an AI revolution right now, and there's been other revolutions. There's been other industrial revolutions, and I think in a macro level, there will be a shift in jobs. So jobs will be eliminated, but I think at the larger level, like there will just be a shift to other things, other areas. I don't know what that is, right? I'm not an economist, not a good one. I think that folks should be, Shri alluded to, it can be better safeguarded by really understanding the foundations of AI, which is why I wanted to pair those upfront slides that were a little more technical, by really kind of knowing how to use it, what it is, how to get the most out of it. That is what it's going to help you with job security and job growth as well, because you want to hire leaders that know how to use the best tools. The other thing is I like to think of AI not only what it can help me do in my current job and job description, but also how can it help me extend outside of the parameters of that job description. So an example I've used before is our head of data science. Now, when he gets bogged down and has these ideas that we cannot design and prototype for him immediately, he just goes to Claude and he creates a beautiful clickable prototype of his concept. And guess what? That helps get it on the roadmap and backlog a lot quicker. So I think people should be looking for ways to extend and expand their role and take ownership of what they, and not get held up by other folks that they might otherwise get tripped up working with. That might be a little bit more of a bullish maverick mentality, but just a personal thought I have.
Thank you all for sharing. Probably could spend another hour talking to each of you about all of the wonderful, fascinating things that AI is bringing to market and the ways it's shifting. But I believe we promised the people demos. So without further ado, we are going to shift. So founders, I'm going to have all of you turn your screens off, minus Josh and Wendy. Would love for you to come forward. So I'm really excited to introduce you all to Wendy Johnson. Wendy is a real-life customer success leader. And so she will be evaluating all of the tools throughout the demos with real problems and pain points that she's either currently experiencing in her organization or has experienced in the past. So without further ado, Wendy, over to you.
Thank you, Jenny. Esteemed panelists, as your pseudo buyer for today, you can think of me like most everyone else in SaaS. You know, we're being asked to do more with less, which looks like delivering customer value and delivering on revenue targets in a way that's predictable and sustainable, without the benefit of additional headcount, as you're mentioning, Brent, and without burning out the team. So I don't need to tell anyone who's in this webinar that this is not an easy task. There's some real barriers and pain points that are making it tough and that I'm looking to solve for, hopefully with AI as a bloomer. One of the big ones, our CSMs are bogged down in admin work. We all know the mantra, you can't manage what you can't measure, so tracking activity is a must, but the downside is it eats into time that could be spent doing higher impact work. And so instead, our CSMs are stuck in spreadsheets and disparate systems and tooling and providing summaries and status updates, and that's not where we went. Efficient and effective customer journey management from onboarding forward is another pain point. It's clunky and inconsistent. We've got plenty of very well-intentioned process and templates and frameworks, but much of it's noise that either gets ignored or abandoned, or it bogs us down. And the result is we're seeing inconsistent and delayed value delivery, a higher cost to serve, more fire drills, all of which we all know ultimately puts renewals and growth at risk. We also don't have a clear, much less a unified view of the customer or of team performance. We are literally cobbling together data from email, call recordings, Slack, CRM, support tickets, Tableau, product telemetry, you name it, just to get a basic pulse on a single account. It is a huge lift, and it is next to impossible to get complete insights to what's working and what needs improvement and what to prioritize across the board. And without that visibility into that risk and opportunity, it's incredibly challenging to coach the team or to intervene to course correct in time. One other thing too, that I don't know that everyone thinks about is not having a single pane of glass view of the customer makes it really hard to align and collaborate with other internal teams. Sadly, we who are on the closest to the front lines and closest to the customer, we struggle to influence product and go-to-market strategy in the way that I would hope. There's our customer health score. Yes, sadly, it is a problem. To be blunt, in my opinion, it feels more like a vanity metric than something that's actionable. It tracks known activity, but it's not illuminating our blind spots. It's missing nuance, like the kind of stuff that you hear on calls and that lives in email threads. And it's not predictive. We haven't landed on something that correlates to revenue. So it's directional at best, which is better than nothing, but it's not guiding our teams towards better decisions and higher impact actions. And finally, we're reactive, not because we want to be, but because we lack the infrastructure to be proactive. We don't have strong signal and flag, and even if we built all the rule-based recommendations and playbooks for every possible scenario under the sun, is a lot of work and it is really hard to maintain. So we end up reacting to what's in front of us, we make our best guess, or we're defaulting to something that's kind of non-specific that doesn't move the needle. And ultimately, that all holds us back from driving real adoption and growth. So with all that said, what I'm hoping to do is to reimagine customer success and identify the best suite of purpose-built AI tooling that our budgets will allow, that'll actually help us work smarter so customer success can be more surgical and maximize the impact of human interaction. I don't think customer success is ever going to go away, and scale its impact and become that growth engine that we want it to be. So I'm very much looking forward to digging in and learning from each of you today as you might be able to help. So with that, Josh, starting with you, I'm excited to hear what you have to share and how UpdateAI might help solve for some of the problems on my pretty dense laundry list.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. We appreciate having you as a prospect. Okay, I'm going to speed through this because I took up some additional time in the beginning, so I need to pay this back here. But thank you for the opportunity to share UpdateAI. We're all about helping to take your risk signals and capture them straight from the customer's mouth and early so that you can act on them. There's two main major things that we're helping to solve for, a little bit philosophical. But as companies grow, as the accounts and the team sizes grow and the company revenues grow, the conversations that you're having with customers, interactions, whether it's meetings, chats, whatever, goes up exponentially. I don't think anybody would debate that. But the ability to absorb all that information at a more leadership level or a unified level, which I know is the number one option when we got that poll a second ago of unification of customer intelligence, that doesn't scale the same way. So that red area is all the loss in knowledge about your customers that your front lines are getting, but the rest of the organization is not. And we want to help solve for that. We also know that quality of life in SaaS has gone down. And so no matter what number you want to look at here, that's kind of a known truth, unfortunately. And so we want to help to increase the quality of life. So for individual contributors and team members, we appeal to these three stakeholders within an organization. The ICs, we say them 5 hours a week. Teams are helping with that knowledge transfer and unification. And then for leaders, it's those executive level insights. And our product is based on those three themes. So the three pillars are meeting recaps, what people traditionally knew us as, a really good meeting note taker, but there's more. Account briefs, and then voice of customer discovery and topics and insights and patterns and that sort of thing. So I want to jump then quickly, Wendy, unless you have any upfront questions for me. Okay, I'm gonna jump into the platform. So this is a demo environment. We've got our sample prospect here, deal desk, or customer, as it were, and you can see here you've got the list of past meetings that we've had with deal desk. Let's go into, again, this the first layer of the product, the first pillar is the meeting recap itself. Now, a meeting recap is a meeting recap is a meeting recap, right? I know that there's a plethora of different options out there for you. One of the things that people appreciate is the way that we format these notes. We make them intentionally, when we went out there to market, we said we want this to be intentionally focused on the IC. And so we've formatted it in a way where it's very digestible, very readable. Everything you're going to see in this demo is all AI generated with no manipulation. I can click on any of these AI moments and it'll take me straight to that part of the conversation. And then we start to get really bespoke and something that we do that nobody else in the industry does, which is we have fine-tuned our AI to consistently pick up on the key risks, growth opportunities, sales opportunities, product feedback, customer questions, decisions made with customers, advocacy or praise moments, and then important numbers on every single call that you have with customers. And as you see this, you can see that this is clearly based on the different types of go-to-market, mainly post-sales go-to-market roles, and how those insights can help those stakeholders. Eating analytics, okay, we give you talk ratio, client follow-up email. This is a super simple thing, but people love it. It just shaves those couple of seconds and that kind of tactical busy work and helping you get out that post-meeting memo. And then you can create your own framework. It takes literally a minute to create a framework. I've got some preset ones here. So if it's pre-sales, maybe it's BANT. and we'll go ahead and automatically take the conversation and put it into that framework. And then from there, you can pass it into Salesforce or HubSpot or Gainsight or any of your platforms of preference. Ask me anything. I can ask any question to find that needle in the haystack information. And then we have some advanced shareability, because we know you're going to share this back with customers. So you can actually turn on or off which parts of the recap you want to share. That's the meeting recap level of the product. Again, just the foundation of what we do. What we were known for historically, but not really the value that we're serving most to folks these days. The next level is at the account level. And here is where we take, again, that unification of information about each customer. So each customer mapped to HubSpot or to Gainsight or to Salesforce, whatever that master list of accounts is going to be. You can go in here and you can see all the past meetings that I've had with Deal Desk in this case, and I can get a quick view of this. This is where I'll go. I'm prepping for an upcoming call, and I don't have more than the 5 minutes to prep, unfortunately, whether for good or bad reason. I can go and I can summarize the past couple of calls, right? So maybe that's perfect if I'm a CSM and I want to take over and get a summary of the last few calls that my sales team had. And you can see the summary is kind of spit out here. We identify stakeholders on every call, and we'll give you a profile of each stakeholder, effectively what their likes, what their dislikes are, what the product requests are. We infer whether they're a decision maker, whether they're a champion, or whether they're a detractor, those sorts of pieces of information. And then again, you have those frameworks that you can create custom, or you can use some of the ones that we have preset. And here's where it'll take, whatever date range I select. So if it's like, show me all the conversations from the last quarter, and it will go and form this. So here's where you can use this to get ready for renewal conversations. Leaders can go in here and get a quick update on the account of the type of information they want to see, and really, really helpful for being able to be more strategic about accounts. Account story gives you a quick timeline. Ask me anything, you can get any information. And that's the second level of the product. The third level is the overall kind of insights that we glean across whatever segment that you want to choose from of your customer base. I forgot to mention it, but all of our data at this point is based on conversations. I'm having a little fight here with my filter. So all of the things you're seeing here today are based on your Zoom or your Microsoft Teams or WebEx calls. But I can slice it. I select the different customer segment that I want. We don't have much to choose from here in this demo environment, but I can map it to whatever property is in my CRM. So pick my segment, and then automatically, with zero work or setup, we will identify all the key themes across risk, product feedback, advocacy, growth. Again, those same consistent categories so that people know what to look for. And we'll cluster them together and we'll bubble them up into these different themes. And if there were more accounts in this demo environment, you'd see all the accounts that made reference to this particular theme. I can go and I can summarize this theme. So I call it kind of the billboard charts of voice of the customer. We're giving you the top 10 lists, as it were, of each of the different things. Now you can create custom topics as well. You can follow topics, and we'll send you a recap notification every time there's a new instance of a topic that really matters to you. And really where we're going with this is a more bespoke type of newsfeed. Almost consider it the TikTok, Instagram, if you will, of voice of customer, where we start to feed you digestible clips and moments that matter most to you based on what you've actively followed, based on your role, based on similar types of that knowledge graph type of stuff that I refer to. There's some more bells and whistles. We've got some more stuff that I was going to share, but I do want to help us catch up on time. So I'll leave it at that, Wendy.
Well, it was a lot. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for walking through really good stuff. I mean, what I'm hearing, coming back to all the pains that I outlined, we don't need to go through that list again, but you definitely touched off on a number of them. You help address the administrative pain and all that manual work and help generate high quality output, address the reactive engagement and move people more proactive, address the alignment pain by providing more visibility into the account. Before we move on to Brent, I do have one question though. And that is, some of what you had reminds me of what I see with Gong.
Yeah.
So how do you work, or do you work with companies that have Gong in place?
We do. We work with folks with Gong. When we hear folks have Gong or Clary, right, is another big one. Yeah. Actually, our eyes light up because there's an opportunity for us. So first of all, I'm seeing this really cool unification in the market with prospects that before sales would get Gong, and then they would kind of give like leftover seats to, here, okay, CS, here's a couple of seats for you. And CSMs and folks would either like it or they wouldn't use it at all. Now, nice, conveniently, I'm seeing this unification where teams, revenue teams across the entire life cycle are coming together and making a decision about like what's going to matter most across the entire life cycle, post-sales and pre-sales. So Gong doesn't offer the same level of sophistication nearly as we do as far as voice of customer discovery, like those topics that we generate in those reports. So we actually have an integration where you can take your Gong calls, take your Clear calls, we'll sit on top of it and we'll generate those key themes. And that's the type of stuff that you can bubble up in executive level reports and really can be a huge driver in identifying risks and opportunities to help drive the business.
Cool. Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. Awesome. Well, keeping the show moving here, moving forward.
Thank you.
Now, I'd love to turn it over to you, Brent. I'm excited to see what Reef can provide to solve for, again, my many pains and figure out how we can work smarter.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Wendy. Great to meet you, and thank you for clearly laying out your pain points. And look forward to taking you through an overview of Reef and hopefully addressing most of those things. So let me share, and we'll jump right in. Okay, so a little bit about Reef, and then we'll jump into a quick demo. So there's a little context I think is important to share right now, because in light of the pains that you mentioned, there's also something that's the elephant in the room that we're all dealing with right now, which is economic uncertainty. And there's a reality when the economy is uncertain, or even worse, if there's a recession or downturn, the spotlight on retention gets much, much brighter, because through hard times, retention is a thing that keeps the best companies afloat. And it's the most predictable part of the business when you can take care of and retain your existing customers. That funds the business's ability to continue to invest and innovate and do the things it needs to do to compete. So in that light, there's a big unsolved problem in B2B that people have been hacking away at for decades, but it really hasn't been effectively solved. And so churn is not only a problem of losing customers, but it really does suppress growth. The idea is that if you lose every dollar of churn that you lose, to go replace that dollar of churn costs you $1.30 in new revenue just to fill the bucket because of customer acquisition cost. And that's just to get to even, right? If you really want to drive growth on top of that, you're taking a lot of that new growth, using it to fill the bucket, and then you have less on top to really drive growth. That suppresses your growth rate, your company's valuation, market cap, right? So the number one way that you can help contribute to your company's value is to improve retention. And so what if there was a way to consistently recover up to 50% of the revenue that would have otherwise churned? And that's what Reef is laser focused on. So Reef is a machine learning based early warning system optimized for your data specifically and operationalized in your current systems. No new technology to adopt or front-end systems to adopt. But said more simply, Reef is a cheat code for retention. And so the way to think about this is, and I mentioned this in the preamble earlier, a lot of organizations are in a mode where they're doing their best, and CSMs are inherently very busy trying to keep up with customer demands, trying to use their own knowledge of customers and the data that they have to make decisions about where to invest, but it's not always clear. And what we want to do is help organizations move to a model where they can completely trust their data. They can prove the predictive power and understand which customers are likely to churn, which customers are likely to grow, and selectively invest in those customers. And that allows you, with fewer resources, to drive more revenue. So there's an approach that we have called probability-based retention. This is really playing the probabilities to decide in a disciplined way how you allocate resources in order to maximize customer outcomes and revenue for your organization. And there's 3 steps to deploy probability-based retention. The first is building a time-based predictive model. So I mentioned this before, but if you really want to recover revenue that would have otherwise churned, it's important to not only understand who is likely to churn, but when they will churn. So many organizations are in a position today where they're having to trust rules-based scoring or a general health score to try to understand customer risk. And it's better than nothing, but you really can't prove the predictive power, and it's hard to make bets based purely on an existing health score. Some organizations have moved ahead and are creating their own predictive models using machine learning. most of those internal projects and data science teams utilize what's called a classifier model to do that. It's a model that separates customers who are likely to churn from customers who are not likely to churn. This is really useful. If you understand the customers that are likely to churn, at least you know where you can start to focus to make a difference. But it's also missing the element of time. When are those customers likely to churn? Because the way you sequence and prioritize those investments is just as important as understanding who is going to churn. So with a time-based model, you can start to cohort customers and say, if I can correctly identify customers likely to churn 6 to 9 months in advance, I can actually engage those customers at an optimal time, not when you're talking about the renewal, when you're in the natural workflow and life cycle with that customer, you can proactively address the risk so that you have a good situation when you get to renewal and you're not fighting from behind at that point. So a time-based predictive model is critical, paired with the ability to understand not only who's at risk, but why. What are the reasons why a customer scored as high risk, and what can you do to engage that risk and turn that customer around? Then once you have this in place, the idea is not to go run heavy workflow or playbooks for every customer and create a big time suck. The whole idea is, in a very lightweight way that takes seconds, you're just acknowledging every recommendation. I got it, I see the risk, and I'm going to determine what to do about it based on my own knowledge of this customer. And then measure, adapt, and improve. Keep track of what's happening so you can understand what is the incremental revenue that you're driving as a result of these recommendations. And are the people who are embracing these recommendations performing better than people who are ignoring or dismissing the recommendations? So as an example, Abrigo came to Reef in 2023. They had a good health score. It was completely objective, based on product signals, and they did a pretty good job at the account level of understanding risk. But it wasn't based on machine learning. It wasn't truly predictive. So, and they're very forward-leaning and they want to stay ahead of the curve. So they said, look, we really like what you're talking about. Come and prove that this actually works. So we spent the last year, 2024, bringing this to life and showing what we could do. So even though they had a good health score, it had some blind spots. And we were able to identify 2.35 million in risk that was being missed by their previous health score. So this was uniquely identified by the machine learning as an advancement on their previous score. Of that 2.35 million, they were able to recover over 1.1 million in revenue that they would have otherwise lost. And we were able to prove this through backtesting. And this is highly attributable to the Reef recommendations that was going out to their teams. So the way that this works in practice is that Reef connects to your data sources. Salesforce primarily as a CRM, and we also, within Salesforce, we look at who your customers are, attributes about those customers, your sales history with those customers, how many opportunities have you won and lost, what those customers have purchased, what the start and end dates are in those different contracts, and then also what products they're using. Product telemetry, either coming through something like Appendo or Heap or Amplitude, or a warehouse like Snowflake or Databricks. And then we're also taking support engagement data, incorporating that. And then we go through the process of organizing that data, because one, these data are coming from different sources. Two, this data is optimized for day-to-day operations and operational analytics. What we need is data that's optimized for machine learning, which needs to be understood over time. So we have automation that organizes the data, and then we can build these highly predictive models to predict for full churn, to predict for partial churn, to predict for cross-sell, upsell, etc. And then we can create a high-performing model. We'll prove that it works, and then we'll deliver recommendations where your team spends their time today. So there's not a new front-end experience to adopt here. We're delivering recommendations in Salesforce or Gainsight or PlanHat or whatever that CSP or CRM is, and then your team can acknowledge and take action in a matter of seconds. And then we measure what works, who's following through, what's happening as a result, how much revenue is your CS team and your organization generating that they wouldn't have otherwise, that you're contributing back to that organization. So let's take a look at how this looks in the product. So let me actually go here first. So let's start here. So this is our native Salesforce integration. Very similar if it's Gainsight or another CSP. PHP, but the idea is that you'll see a new object, Reef Recommendations, that's seamlessly integrated into the experience. And I can see here, I've got a list of recommendations, and I can see that even though these recommendations were delivered in January, the renewal dates aren't until the summer. So I'm getting very good advance warning about this risk. And then I only have one job. I can acknowledge the risk. There's not a playbook that's been automatically assigned or an action. All I have to do is say, I disagree. I talked to this customer yesterday. They're definitely renewing, so the data is wrong at this point. And that's helpful for us. That feeds back into our data set, and the models can improve over time. You can say, I agree, but I'm already aware of it. I'm running a play. I don't need help with what to do. Or you can say, I agree, and I'd love some suggestions for what to do. So I save this, and now you'll see there's a risk score here. I'm sure everybody's had risk scores show up on dashboards, and they're often very unsatisfying because there's not a lot of detail on why the customer scored the way they scored. So what Reef does is we show our work. So you can see here that not only do we say who's at risk, they're high risk, golden squid is high risk, 95 risk score, but we tell you exactly why. What are the data points in the machine learning model that are causing this customer to be scored at high risk? So there's certain product areas that their usage is down significantly, either over the all-time max or over the previous 30 days. These three data signals are the signals in the model that are contributing the highest risk overall to this customer being likely to churn, so you know exactly what you can address to put this customer in better shape. We can also auto-generate the best actions based on the specific data signals that are causing the risk. So there's no fixed playbooks that you have to go grind through every time. The suggested plays are auto-generated as a result of why each customer is at risk every time they score. And then what we can do is actually track the follow through and what's happening. So I can see for the different CSMs that are receiving recommendations, who do they get recommendations for which period, how are they originally scored, and what's happening over time. Are you improving the score? Are you getting more than the expected revenue? So you can really track that follow through and ROI. So Wendy, any questions based on the walkthrough?
Oh, so many questions. Well, first of all, appreciate the time and thoughtful summary and detail. One question I have is, what if our data quality is not so good? Do we need to do any cleanup, data hygiene before we would engage with Reef?
Yeah, great question. We get this from almost every customer and prospect that we work with. Nobody's very confident in the state of their Salesforce data, especially. We actually have a lot of automation that helps clean up messy data. We also rely most heavily on data that's more reliable in Salesforce, like opportunity history and revenue over time, support cases, things that are created through standard processes. And so data quality is rarely, if ever, a blocker for Reef.
Okay. Another question is, my vision includes ensuring each customer segment gets the right kind of attention. So, strategic clients within high touch,
Yep.
the high value interactions, long tail, have some sort of intelligent automation that even amplifies our high touch efforts. So how or does Reef account for risk identification and recommendations for the long tail, like the digital versus?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's a really great question. So the demo you saw today is more geared towards people covering customers and the experience for them. But this is a really important part of a digital strategy as well, because if you can effectively segment your digital customers and know which ones are at high risk and start to categorize reasons for that risk, and then you do bespoke sequences and messaging to those high-risk customers that's different from other customers, it allows you to be much more effective in those digital approaches. You can also start to maybe selectively add humans to the process for high-risk customers. So you've got some selective pooled resource, and you can start to justify the investment because of the revenue that you recover.
Great. Helpful. Well, it clearly addresses much of my current pain around health scoring. It transforms our current directional score into something that's outcome-based, which is brilliant. It's predictive, it's actionable, helps us prioritize and work smarter too by giving us the early warning signals and the specific recommendations. Love that. I also see an added benefit of improving forecasting predictability, which is something we're always seeking to accomplish. So see a lot of promise and potential here. Thanks, Brent. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Wendy.
So just a quick note, I think given where we are in the webinar, we may not have time for the intended Q&A at the end. What I would encourage everyone who's in the webinar to do is nevertheless continue posting your questions in the chat, and then founders, if you're able to answer the questions to the degree that you're possible, that would be great. And if we have time at the end, fantastic, but I do want to make sure that there's enough time that we can get through and hear these other products. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Ori. I'm eager to hear how Staircase solves for pain points and complementing and augmenting what UpdateAI and Reef are doing.
Okay, it's good to see you, Wendy. So Staircase, let's talk quickly about staying ahead of churn. If you think about how we used to do things, or still to some degree today, we rely heavily on human judgment, right? You talk to account managers, you talk to CSMs, you try to get their point of view, perspective of what's happening with an account, but that is not scalable. And then we moved, historically into the world of surveys, NPSs, CSATs, and that's a lagging indicator, right? Because you have usually low response rates, but also it comes in maybe 2-3 times a year. So not really effective in a real-time scenario. And then product usage was a holy grail for many years, but that has a lot of challenges. And while a very valuable signal, still not telling you the whole entire truth about what's happening with your account. So if you think about those 3 main categories of signals, kind of the tip of the iceberg, underneath are lying, hundreds, thousands, and tens of thousands of different interactions daily. So think about chats over Slack or Teams with your customers, support tickets, emails being still probably the most dominant form of communication. Of course, calls, across Zoom, Gong, Teams, and then of course, still the product signal. And the big question is, how do you actually merge these signals in a really, effective way to understand what's happening with your customers? And that has not been possible until, the past few years with the capabilities of AI. One thing I think that, the folks that are deep into the world of language, when you're talking about B2B, you have to be very tuned to the type of engagement you're having. So if you just take upon a plain vanilla LLM, it doesn't always understand the interaction. You can see on the left an example where a customer, kicks off the conversation with a very positive, statement, like it's great working with your team, but then continues with, we're starting an RFP. And if you're not a subject matter expert, you might actually think that the situation with the customer is good. In reality, you're at risk of churn. And so on and so forth. There are many examples where you have to be attuned to both the commercial context and the emotional context of your customer base. And what Staircase does, it really listens to all the channels of communication. So think about, once again, emails, tickets, calls. It basically engages that multi-channel approach. It then uses a combination of both quantitative, traditional ML as well as LLMs to understand where you are both at risk and opportunity. So we'll detect churn and both risk of churn. We'll understand movement of personnel, sentiment being, one of the, areas that we started off strong, relationship strength, multi-threading, all that stuff. And then we'll trigger action in your system of choice. If it's a customer success platform like Gainsight, if you're using Salesforce, or if you're using any other system in place. And I think, Wendy, you were asking things about, like, how do you scale without additional headcount? We already are seeing, strong signals in the market where you're able to save time because CSMs no longer have to log data. They don't have to summarize data, and they don't have to generate reports for their managers. And then also around the renewal and prediction, we also have automated health scores and the likes of that. So with that, I'll jump into the demo. And just before I jump in, one thing that we found in the field that works really well is using things like Slack and Team, which I think we're all on, especially as managers. And one of the things Staircase will do, it will engage with you as a manager or a CSM through Slack, and it'll notify you whenever there is an interaction with your customer that might be very risky. An example here is a customer named Hourglass, which, there's a very negative interaction. This kind of interaction might not percolate to you as a leader for many hours or maybe a couple of days. And this brings the kind of the field back to managers, kind of remains you in founder mode. We're talking about founders here today. So with that, I'll jump into the platform. Just a minute. And back to that example, what you see here are several customers, one of them being Hourglass, the one we just got that Slack notification. And you can see that each customer is represented by a tile. The size of the tile is relevant to the revenue or the size of the customer, and the color is an AI-generated health score. And Hourglass is in red, and perhaps I don't remember exactly what's happening with Hourglass, so I can click on Hourglass, and I'll get quickly a generative AI summary of all the interactions across all the channels. So a very crisp understanding that there is right now a renewal going on with this customer, but there's also a dip in the health score that Staircase identified automatically, and also explained by the fact that the sentiment and a recent message is actually a churn risk. So with that, as a manager or someone who's overseeing several accounts, I have a pretty good understanding in about 10 seconds of what happened with this account, and I can already start solutioning. Or I could go into the account page and go in a little bit deeper and understand, in addition to that summary, I'll actually see a visual timeline of some key moments in the life cycle of the account. And people are very visual. I think we understand information visually. So it's a great way to understand those key moments. And there probably are thousands of interactions, but Staircase is intelligent enough to choose those extremely important moments, like this negative message. And you can actually click on each one of them and read the interaction so that you know for sure that this is actually a reliable call out. And you can see a progression here of negativity between the customer and the vendor that leads ultimately to a churn risk. So Staircase gives you, within about 20 to 30 seconds, without knowing much about this customer, a clear understanding of what's happening with this engagement so that you can now take action. You'll be able to see things like the engagement over time, multi-channel, the sentiment over time, which again is a very unique algorithm that we created. We are also one of the only platforms that will engage conversational intelligence with product usage. So you can actually integrate telemetry in and combine that all into a very robust health score. So aside from that ability, I think one of your pain points was, how do I get to see everything in one pane of glass? Then you'll also be able to see the engagement on a human level. And one of the things that our customers really love is the radar, which is built automatically. By the way, everything in Staircase is ingested and understood automatically without any human logging at all. It's all done from the interactions. The radar will show you all the people that are interacting with this customer Hourglass. This is very useful for coordination. So if you're a CSM and sales just spoke to the customer, you're actually aware of that now. But it also can give you, as a leader, the ability to understand, if there are too many or too few people engaging with an account. The quantitative side is very valuable, but the qualitative side is also very important. And this is where we provide you kind of a relationship matrix between the customer, and you have different folks like the decision makers, the champions, and your team. And you can see exactly who's engaging and what is the strength of the relationship. And once again, this is an AI-generated relationship score. So it's not like a CSM or an account manager has to go in once a week or once every 2 weeks and update. This is all done in real time. So now that you have a clear view of a customer, you can also look at groups of customers. And I showed you earlier the tile view, but you can also see kind of a more traditional tabular view where you can sort according to the health score or engagement or sentiment and quickly understand where your customers are. One more thing I'm going to show is our reporting capabilities. And we have a really robust group of reports, but one of them I think is really important as we talk about efficiency. And I think one of the questions that came up was, how do I know that I'm efficiently running an organization or a small team? What Staircase can do is, by each of your customers, it'll assess the amount of time you and your team are spending, the entire company, on this customer, and be able to translate that into financial metrics so that you can understand if you are either overserving or underserving a particular customer, especially at this day where everyone is very conscious about headcount and efficiency and productivity. So to wrap it up, you have a high-level dashboard with capabilities. First of all, you have a prompt where you can ask almost any question, like any kind of chat GPT that you're used to. So you can query across all your accounts or across an account. You'll get a high-level view of health across customers. You'll get actionable insights that you can actually categorize, but also out of the box, Staircase, will assume for you. So you'll be able to see which accounts are dark, which are, not trending for renewal quickly, which have churn risk or relationships are missing. And you get a clear view of what's happening with your customer base and can take action very quickly as a leader. Any questions?
Yes, I always have questions. Ori, I'm wondering, it seems like since you're tracking all of the different kind of engagement metrics, it would feel like there's an ability for me to identify performance gaps in the team as well, so that I can intervene in some sort of fashion to help and coach. I know that you touched on the efficiency, but is there other data beyond that I could leverage?
Absolutely. So you can pivot all the data, not only on a customer, but you could pivot it also on a team, and you could see various team members. You could, dive into metrics. So if we went back, for example, to an account, you could actually go and see the various stakeholders, your team. So I'll show you, for example, in the radar, and you could see, for example, how Liam is performing, what engagements he's participating in. And you could also provide some feedback, for example, from quantitative, like responsiveness, but you could also use it for load balancing. So you could understand if a certain CSM or a certain team member is overloaded, not responding, let's say, well enough, or you could also identify through our topic analysis if there's certain areas that individual needs enablement.
Excellent. Okay, cool. Another question I had is reflecting on Reef's offering. Are you thinking about incorporating structured data into the solution?
Yeah, so that's a great point. So we take unstructured data and we structure it, if you think about it that way. And then we run a quantitative analysis on top of that. We also connect to a CRM, so we're able to look at data coming from Salesforce or HubSpot or any one of those. So we do ingest that tabular data. So if I went back into, for example, the account level, you can see here that these are actually values pulled from a CRM or like a CSP like Gainsight, and those are usually structured metrics that can be like segmentation, renewal dates, revenue, all that stuff, and that can be incorporated both into the health score and into the overall analysis. So absolutely.
And then the elephant in the room, what about those who aren't using Gainsight?
Absolutely.
Or with other CSPs, or what does that look like?
Yeah, Staircase is a standalone platform. Even though we've been acquired by Gainsight, we are still run as an independent product. We interact with a variety of customer success platforms. We have customers from the entire range of customer success platforms and CRMs, and we will continue to support that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ori. I'm seeing a lot of exciting synergies, but clear across the three solutions so far. Hoping budgets will allow. For sure, this is the closest solution to providing that single 360-degree unified multi-channel view of the customer that benefits everyone, right? Not only just CSMs, the line, but managers in the C-suite, and solves for a lot of common blind spots and timely intervention that's needed. So great stuff. You've given me a lot more to consider. And with that, last but certainly not least, Sri, I'm excited to hear from you specifically around how RocketLink can help solve challenges around the customer journey management, specifically during onboarding, which we all know is such a critical make it or break it phase of the journey.
Thank you, Wendy. Yeah, I think as you sort of talk through your problem statements, I thought here's a few things that we can definitely help address, right? So firstly, I would say bringing that consistency into that customer journey itself, especially the more you execute in a very planned manner early on in the journey, the more you've set up that customer as a customer for life for success. Of course, you may need to re-onboard customers from time to time as their business changes and your product changes. So we have your ability to manage those journeys, re-onboarding journeys as well. We do have ways for you to uncover blind spots in your engagements and how you're driving your initiatives with customers through early warning signals. And of course, I think there is, from our learning, one of the reasons why you end up in a reactive spot with customers, you end up in situations where there are escalations, etc., with customers, is the lack of having the rigor to, plan that journey the right way, document things, document decisions the right way, and execute in a tight manner with each customer. Now, we're going to help you probably only with your larger customers, not with the long tail of customers in terms of being a solution for like digital onboarding or digital success, right? So it's more for where there is a human in the loop. So I wanted to state upfront as well in terms of where we can play a role. And of course, I think last but not the least, you mentioned the administrative overhead, definitely an area which we've focused a lot on to say, hey, how can we minimize the work that a team member needs to do? They should be applying their minds on what's the right solution for the customer. They should be working with the customer on those solutions, but the rest of it should be more or less taken care of. So that's been our approach. With that, let me share my screen and I'll do two things. I have like a couple of slides to give like a high level overview, and then we'll go into the actual product demo. Now, one more call out is we're not going to demo the whole product. The big reason why that doesn't make sense for us over here is like we have a very large platform, professional services automation platform, right? We'll focus on the Gen AI features that we've recently launched for this demo, given the time we have. So I'll first cover what is our vision for where we are headed with AI, right? So any implementation team, onboarding team, or even success team that's working on initiatives, driving initiatives with customers, we want to introduce this AI workforce that works alongside your team. And the three levels at which the AI workforce works with you, right? One is an AI shadow for a leader. How can we give you that quick visibility on things going wrong? How can we surface risks, surface opportunities, etc., for you to take action? How can we give you insights on your team, how your team is doing, so that you can coach up the team? So that's the AI shadow. AI teammate is doing work alongside your team. So think of, hey, there is a data migration that I need to do for a customer. Now, today, that's a task that is tracked on a project or a success plan, and it gets done by a human. But instead, can we have agents take ownership of delivering on the task, where you say, hey, assign this task to my data validation and data transformation agent. There's a description of what needs to be done, and the agent does the work for you, right? That's the AI teammate. So data is one example, but it could be setting up a field in a system. It could be any sort of configuration activity, solutioning activity, transformation activity that a team member does today. They're deciding on what to do. They're assigning the work to agents that can do it with them, right? So that's sort of the vision. And last but not the least, AI scribe. Now, what we're talking about is not your regular note taker, but more of how can we organize and document account information, account intelligence solutions that have been configured for a customer, all of that. Now, the more you capture and organize and document, the more you're giving power to the AI teammate, the AI shadow, everyone else in this space to take advantage of that documentation, right? And that's why we feel this was the most strategic part for us to get started on our vision. So while this is our larger vision, the AI scribe is where we've actually launched our first agent. We call it AI Fills. What AI Fills does for you is, firstly, any customer project where there is, let's say, a technical implementation or some initiative you're driving with the customer, how can we ensure there is consistent, high quality documentation that your team is able to do? How can we ensure that all of the mails you need to send out, the communication you need to send out, the internal notes you need to capture, all of that, the handoffs that you need to capture, all of that is being done in a seamless way, easy way for your team. And that's where we've invested our energy in what we've launched. Are you able to see my slide on this? I just want to make sure that.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to move into the actual product demo at this point. Can you all see my screen again?
Yeah.
All right. So what you're seeing here is like a project plan with the customer, right? There is, various phases and tasks that are happening. What you see over here is I can have a list of accounts that I'm working on. I can see what's the status, what phase are we in with this customer? What's the progress on this account? So from an onboarding journey, any number of fields can be tracked over here. You can pretty much stay on top of everything that's happening in this customer journey. But what you also see over here is there are action items, there are onboarding notes, and these have been generated from AI. So there's a Rocketlaine assistant that joins every call that's able to bring together, here is what we learned on the call, here are the action items, here are the next steps we want to capture, here are the overall notes on this project so far, and add it automatically to different areas in the product. Now, what I want to show you over here is how we've created this experience. Are you able to see AI fill templates on the screen? Yeah. So how we've created this experience where you can templatize what you want to glean from different kinds of calls, how you want to document it, how you want to format it. And that's what we call AI fills. So there's first fills templates that we have. And you can see there's a variety of templates we've created for ourselves. This is our actual production account at Rocketlaine. So you can see there is like escalation solutions offered as a fill, requirements as a fill, sentiment as a fill, decisions made as a fill, trade-offs as a fill, bugs as a fill, right? So goals discussed, topics discussed, various kinds of things over here that you can see. Now, each of these is as simple as a prompt. For example, if I pull up escalations solutions offered, you're going to see document solutions offered for various issues discussed on the call, along with the trade-offs. Format it as a bulleted list, use this tone. So this is simply a way of saying, here is what I want to extract from the call. Let me define what I want to extract, and I will next define where I want to use it. The insight behind this is what we want to glean from different kinds of calls. If I was on a requirements gathering call versus I was on a, let's say, solutioning call versus I was on an escalation call, what I want to take away from that call, what granularity it needs to be at, and where I want to document it is going to be different. So this is, for example, a solutions discussed AI fill, where you can see there is a much more deeper prompt that I'm able to capture here on what I want from the call. Now, I can then go in and say, hey, I want to add this fill into a customer solution document. So I have a variety of document templates in the system. The document template can take things which are direct from like our Salesforce integration or from Rocketlaine itself to say, here's a list of integrations captured in the handoff, in the handoff form or handoff that came from Salesforce. But I can also say, add this AI fill, which is also pulling out from the customer call. What was the customer's environment? What's the description of what all they're using? For an implementation to start, you want to know the customer's existing environment well. You also want to capture what were the solutions discussed, what were the decisions made, what were the trade-offs that were discussed. And you want to put this together as a solution document coming out of a solutioning call. Likewise, there may be other calls, right? A requirements call, you may have just meeting notes, you may be scoping out a custom integration. You can have all these different kinds of document templates that you create. And oops, this is a work in progress document template. But think of this as, for example, let's say success criteria. I go into this. There is a whole document template over here. I can add to this things that are coming directly out of our, let's say, system. So I can say, hey, pull in the project name, the project date, things like that. But I can also say, add takeaways, action items, you know, solutions discussed, or customer environment into this document, right? So this is how easy it is to sort of build your document templates by combining things that are deterministic, combining things that are coming out of calls. And you not only do that for documents, you can also do that for email templates that you have. For example, this is an escalation email template that I created for myself. That says, hi, customer name. Thanks for spending your time going over the issues today, capturing my notes. And for the notes, it's going to capture first, here are the escalation topics that were discussed. Here's what we discussed as potential solutions. So escalation solutions offered. And here's what I've noted as action items from the call, right? And to show you quick examples of how this worked out, this is a solution document that got created from a call where it says, here's the software tools overview, solutions discussed, as well as, the meeting decisions made and action items emerging from it. What were the trade-offs discussed, pros and cons for each of the things we discussed? Or here is like an email that got generated automatically for me from an escalation call I went on with a customer, right? So you're able to see that right here. So here is how we are automating for you. We are enabling the team to do a lot more documentation on your behalf to ensure that everything is captured the right way, documentation is automated. And this is the stepping stone for AI to do a lot more work for you, because when you document, here's the requirements, here's the solution, here's the actions, here's the configuration we need to do. Now I can start looking at this across different companies, different customers, and I'm almost building this AI solution engineer as well, because, the more is documented, the more we know about every customer's world, and we're able to borrow from our past learnings. I'm going to stop there in interest of time. Take any questions.
All I can say is that throughout each of these presentations, I've had to really hold back and not hit the heart emoji on the reaction, because all of these solutions are phenomenal. This solves a very targeted, very critical use case. I'd love for us to maybe, Josh, have a separate follow-up where we can go deeper and talk to what's on everyone's future roadmaps, because there's a lot of exciting things going on here. And I think if we look at the sum total of these solutions, the collective impact here, it will absolutely solve for the kind of problems that I'm looking for. And then notably to deliver what I need for the business, right? Which is the ongoing retention and growth. So appreciate it. And with that, I will turn it back to you, Jenny and Josh.
Thank you. A little bit long, but thank you so much to everyone who stuck with us. We will send a recording of all of the demos, everything from today. A couple requests for the early slides. We'll make sure we include those as well. We'll also include a form that allows you to tell us who you'd like to learn more from. So you're not going to get enrolled into 4 different lead gen campaigns. Our commitment to you for making the time to be here today. But you get to tell us who you'd like to hear more from. Thank you so much all for joining. It sounds like an opportunity to do a follow-up. We will keep you posted. But on that note, we'll close out. Thank you to all the founders. Thank you for everyone who joined today. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.